that. So I accidentally, it's really weird, I saw the arcade games of those days, big arcade games in bowling alleys, were black and white TVs designed in hardware. It took a year to design a game. And oh my gosh, I saw one that made me think of color. Color is going to come to these games. It's going to be so beautiful. And I just sort of sat there dreaming about how color television in the analog world worked, you know, with calculus equations. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in this new digital world. A little $1 chip can do the job of a $1,000 board. And, you know, I wanted that so bad. Oh my gosh, I've got to try it out. And it worked. You know, I don't know, these ideas come to you. Sometimes, also you have to have that dreaming. They talk about the dreaming period. Well, when I was young, I was really afraid. I was such a geek. Am I psychologically disturbed or something? And I went to the library and secretly I was pulling out books on psychology and reading them. I found out that I wasn't disturbed. The closest I came to any psychological problem was in the shower, my mind might drift off and start thinking of thoughts that were, you know, not right here where your feet are. And so I do like, and when you're shy and you don't have socialization and other people around to talk to, your mind does a lot of talking to itself. And that's when these ideas would occur to me. My gosh, I was lucky I had all the skills to actually build them and make them something real. You can travel around the world and you might encounter hundreds of people with the same ideas of what would be a good app for a phone now, you know, but they don't, but the ones who actually take the job and build it, the companies who put in the money and develop a product, that's where the real results come from.
You know, at the time, what I was struck by too is you were using materials that were available to everybody. You just recombined them in different ways.
Yeah, we don't have that world here anymore, and those of us who would just go down to an electronics store, buy a few little parts. Actually, they didn't sell chips then. It was hard, so I only had them accessible to because I worked at Hewlett-Packard. Buy some chips, solder them together with the wires and make something do. We don't have that world where you can build your own stuff now. If your TV went bad and you were trained in it, you could actually unscrew the back of the television set yourself and probe around and find the bad parts. Even people who knew nothing about technology, and back in those days, a lot of housewives, they would take out the tubes, vacuum tubes, out of their television set, run down to the Safeway grocery store, or whatever it was called back then, Lucky, and they would plug them into a machine and test them, find the bad one. This was a common part of life. You'd bring the good one back, plug it back in your television, and now it worked. So people did a lot of self-repair in those days. You could also put your vacuum cleaner in a closet and protect it, and it would never change. It would work for 40 years, do the same thing well. Nowadays, you know, every 2 years, whatever you have doesn't seem to work because of some little change.
You throw it away.
And especially when it's out in the cloud, you don't have any control. They'll just change over they'll remove a feature that you depended on.
Yeah. So before the Apple I, computers, what was the big breakthrough with Apple I? Before it was all just numbers and you had to type in, but what was the breakthrough that you wanted? More user interface and be able to...
Well, computer technology was understood in terms of the elements inside a computer and the sort of programs the computer understood. And they aren't like the programs you get taught in most schools. Machine language, it was called. Little ones and zeros and exactly what they did. That was understood and how computers had been built in the past. But they all had these horrible looks of tons of buttons and lights, and you'd walk up to it and say, unless I am educated in this stuff, I'm a computer expert, I can't touch this machine, I can't use it. And then we had a group of people that were really inspired by social philosophy, social psychology professors from Stanford and Berkeley talking about how once we owned our own computers, it would be a great new world, and that inspired me so much. I had the talent to make some things I thought of. One of the important ones was it has to be usable by you. Well, first of all, it has to be human. You don't want a big old front panel full of switches and lights. You want a typewriter and a little display on your TV set. That's like a typewriter. Humans could relate to that. So that was step number one. But second of all, you wanted people to be creative. Steve Jobs used the phrase, the bicycle of the mind, because the bicycle is what gave man the energy to distance ratio that was better than any other animal. It was the bicycle. If we had a computer, we could now create tools that would get us further than ever before. Tools in the music business are an example, you know, Pro Tools and all. And the bicycle of the mind. So so anyway, I don't know what topic we were on.
Well, I think it was this is one of the things that we were thinking about. The change in music industry has evolved to the point where someone with very little music training can have a hit record. And that makes some serious musicians who have spent their whole life perfecting their craft uncomfortable. And you took computers, which had before then only been used by people who were really dedicated and knew the code, to a box that you opened up an Apple II and it worked, and anyone can use it. How did that change? Did those first generation feel marginalized? Should musicians today feel...
My biggest motivation of all the Apple II was video games. I love humor, I love fun in life, anything you do. And I had even designed video games for Atari. It was a hard
project,
designing games in hardware. I wanted a machine that you could sit down in half a day, write a really good animated program.
Your own game.
And that a 10-year-old could, written in a simple little language like BASIC. And I strived and achieved that goal. So making it simple to do was a big goal. Anybody could do it, because now you have a tool that you could exhibit your own creativity. Yeah.
You were talking about each one of these breakthroughs. It's at the point where you can never go back. You know, we were talking about black and white to color. We were talking about how these screens, when we first started, a couple of speakers.
Yeah, the one-way doors in technology. Things like even a mouse-based computer. Once you go through that door, you know you aren't going to go back to, I'm going to memorize a whole bunch of commands, or I'm going to hit the forward arrow key 8 times and the down arrow 3 times to get to the letter I want. You know, you're never going to go back. So the one-way doors are always the ones that somehow technology is propelling us in this direction. Are we in control of it? Is it coming from our minds, or is it the technology is causing us to create it? Is it just like a subject of a type of mathematics that we are going to stumble on? This is the direction we're going to go, and we don't know it in advance.
Yeah.
We just sort of discover it rather than create it. And someday, but the technology's not up there to be smart enough to tell us the answer yet.
Well, as Ray Kurzweil said, that point will come. At some point, those two intersecting lines, you know, the singularity.
The singularity. Yeah, I really disdained that my whole life. Computers will never be like a human brain. First program I wrote was a chess problem, and it didn't solve it, and then I calculated it wasn't going to have a solution for 10 to the 25th years. A computer can do things really fast, 1 million times a second, but the human brain has intuition and can think out how to solve a problem, and the computers haven't gotten to that stage yet, and it'll never happen. And the singularity idea came out. Computers will be able to process as much intelligence as the human brain 20 years from now. And I said, poo-poo, what a bunch of baloney, we never will. And then I started thinking about it, and I said, oh my gosh, all the methods of predicting that 20-year point are the right way to predict things. Exponential curves of information usage and its size and its density and its cost. Oh my gosh. And I came around saying, yes, computers are going to be fully conscious in 20 years. And the trouble is, after I said it enough times, what does it mean is so negative. A computer that can think 100 times faster than a human. You know, it's just like the movie Her. That's what I came to the conclusion of before I saw the movie. So I had to find a reason to say it won't happen. So I'm hoping that computers won't become quite as intelligent as humans, because we're at the end of how much smarter we can make our devices, our smartphones and all. We're at the end of it, because Moore's law is a law of physics that says how much smarter can you make your devices every year, how many more electronic neurons can you put on silicon. And I think we're near the end of it for some good reasons that I have, but let's hope. Let's hope. I mean, hey, man, if we're gonna be the family pet building all this equipment to take care of us, and now it takes care of us, and we have to almost do nothing. You know, maybe you're at the top of the money chain or the bottom, but you do almost nothing. You're taken care of for life. We're like the family pet. And when I got that idea about 3 years ago, I started feeding my dogs filet steak every night. Do unto others.
Just a game.
Yeah. That's true though.
That was true. I didn't see that one coming, but okay.
One thing I like about music groups too is that they have a sense of humor. They like humor and they like prank stories, and
well, you said
a little bit of misbehavior leads to creative minds.
You ran into a half-dressed man